It started with a smile. Gal Gadot, the face of strength, grace, and global admiration, sat under the studio lights of the Kelly Clarkson show. The audience leaned in, unaware they were about to witness a moment that would ripple through Hollywood like a shockwave, and then, she stood. No cue, no laughter, no graceful transition. Her chair scraped back against the polished floor. The silence was instant. Cameras still rolled. Kelly froze mid-sentence. The producers didn't cut. They didn't need to. The moment had already exploded. What pushed her this far? What line was crossed so sharp, so personal that one of the world's most composed celebrities would rise, unfiltered, and walk straight into controversy? For years, Gadot had been untouchable, an icon of diplomacy, of resilience. But what happened here wasn't scripted. It wasn't staged. It was raw, messy, real. The image still haunts. Gal Gadot standing alone, framed against the shocked faces of a silent audience. Her voice steady but trembling echoed one final sentence before she disappeared backstage. "We won't repeat it yet. Not until you understand what really led to this." Because this wasn't just a bad interview. It was a reckoning long before the cameras rolled. The fault lines were already forming. Gal Gadot had just wrapped a grueling press tour overseas, 20 interviews in 6 days, each one blurring into the next, smiling, deflecting, repeating the same sanitized answers until they lost meaning. But this interview was different. The Kelly Clarkson show wasn't just another media stop. It was a stage where moments went viral, where cracks turned into headlines. Behind the scenes, the tension was palpable. Gadot's team had requested no personal questions, especially nothing about the recent controversy involving her charity work overseas. But Clarkson's producers had other ideas. There were whispers. Executives wanted ratings. And when ratings are on the line, boundaries become suggestions. Gadot arrived late, not deep late, just tired. Hollow behind the eyes, but kind of tired. That doesn't sleep off. As she stepped into makeup, a staffer mentioned Clarkson wanted to lighten the mood with a surprise segment. Gadot didn't flinch, but something in her eyes tightened, a flicker of control slipping. Meanwhile, Kelly Clarkson was backstage, reviewing her cue cards. She wasn't a villain, but she wasn't naive either. She knew this interview could become something bigger, so METHING unforgettable. The audience was already seated. Applause signs ready, smiles rehearsed, but no one, not the producers, not the crew, not even Gadot herself, knew just how far this was going to go. What looked like just another daytime interview was actually the final thread unraveling in plain sight. The lights dimmed slightly. The applause sign lit up. The music swelled. Gal Gadot stepped onto the set with practiced poise, heels clicking softly against the polished floor. Kelly Clarkson rose from her chair with a bright smile, arms outstretched, the picture of Southern charm. They embraced, briefly tight-lipped, professional, then took their seats beneath the blazing stage lights. At first, it was smooth, surface-level laughs, casual banter about favorite snacks on set. Gadot gave her signature half-smile, eyes distant. Kelly cracked a joke about Wonder Woman's invisible jet. The audience chuckled. Gadot did too, but only with her mouth. Then, the energy shifted. Clarkson leaned forward, voice sweet but sharpened. "So, Gal, let's talk about the trip to the Middle East. There's been a lot of conversation." Gadot blinked once. Her smile faded, just a fraction. "My team was told," she began, but Clarkson cut in gently. "We just want to clear the air. You know, people are curious." In that moment, Gadot straightened her back, hands clasped tightly in her lap. The crowd sensed it, a subtle stiffness. The tension of a guest trapped live. Kelly pushed further, reading from a card. "There's a clip going around, you know the one I mean. Some say it's empowering, some say not so much." Gadot's nostrils flared. Her voice, when it came, was cold steel. "I came here to talk about the film," the audience murmured. Kelly smiled wider, a nervous reflex. She backpedaled, but the air had already curdled. What was once playful now felt precarious, seconds stretched. The silence between each exchange felt heavier than the words themselves. The storm hadn't hit yet, but the first winds had arrived. It happened so fast, and yet, it felt like slow motion. Kelly Clarkson shifted in her seat, pressing once more. "But don't you think, as a public figure, there's a responsibility to address things head-on, especially when it stirs such strong feelings?" That was the match. Gal Gadot's eyes narrowed. Her voice didn't rise. It dropped low, precise, deadly, calm. "Responsibility. You want to talk responsibility on a couch built for sound bites?" Gasps fluttered through the audience. Clarkson froze, blinking, suddenly aware they had crossed into uncharted territory. The cameras kept rolling. You invited me here under the guise of celebration, Gadot continued, and now you're handing me controversy dressed as curiosity. Kelly opened her mouth but nothing came out. Then Gadot stood. No warning, no commercial break, just the scraping of her chair echoing through the studio. I've played the role, she said, staring not at Kelly, but past her into the bright void of the cameras. I've smiled, I've dodged. But if you want a story, here it is. I'm done playing polite. Clarkson rose too, hands raised slightly, not in defense, but disbelief. Gal, wait, but Gadot was already turning. A crew member moved instinctively toward her, then stopped. No one dared interrupt. Not now. A beat of silence. Then Gadot tossed one final line over her shoulder, quiet but piercing. Next time, try honesty before ambush. And just like that, she was gone. The audience didn't clap. They didn't move. The silence rang louder than any standing ovation. That it wasn't a meltdown, it was a reckoning delivered live. The moment the studio door swung shut behind her, the air inside collapsed. Kelly Clarkson stood frozen, hands clasped at her waist, eyes flickering toward the producers behind the cameras. Someone hissed in her earpiece, "Go to break," but she didn't. Not yet. She turned back to the audience, attempting a smile that barely held. "Well," she said, voice cracking, under the weight of the moment. That took a turn. A few in the audience laughed nervously, uncertainly. Most just sat there, stunned. Phones were already out. Recording. Whispered gasps echoed through the bleachers. The stage manager made a cutting motion. Still no commercial. Clarkson cleared her throat, trying to regain control. Gal is passionate, and sometimes things get misread. It was a poor cover. Backstage, chaos. Gadot's team had already left the green room. One intern was crying. A production assistant stood by the dressing room door, clutching a clipboard and not moving. Within minutes, a clip surfaced on Twitter just 11 seconds long. Gadot standing, her final line delivered with spine-chilling calm. The caption, read, *****Gal Gadot destroys Kelly Clarkson live on air. ***** In under an hour, it had 2 million views. By the end of the day, it had fractured the internet, but inside the studio, everything remained still, like the eye of a storm that had just passed, or was only beginning. By nightfall, the internet was ablaze. Gal v. Skelly trended #1 in under 3 hours. Memes flooded Instagram. TikToks reenacted the moment with dramatic filters and over-the-top music. The clipped, 11 seconds long, had already been uploaded in 15 languages, each version gaining thousands of views by the minute. Reddit threads lit up with frame-by-frame breakdowns. One user posted, "Watch her eyes at 0:04, that's when she snaps." Another commented, "She didn't walk out, she walked through fire." But it wasn't just the fans. Celebrities weighed in. Viola Davis tweeted a single word, "dignity." Zendaya posted a broken heart emoji with no caption. Others were less subtle. A-list talk show hosts defended Clarkson, calling the moment a tragic misunderstanding. The internet, however, wasn't buying it. Clarkson's team released a carefully worded statement. "We respect all our guests and regret any discomfort caused during today's segment. We remain committed to open, honest conversation." Gal Gadot's team said nothing. That silence spoke volumes. The divide sharpened. Team Gadot and Team Clarkson became battlegrounds. Think pieces poured in from Hollywood gossip blogs to political commentators analyzing the cultural subtext of the clash. And beneath all the noise, the question pulsed like a heartbeat. Was this just an interview gone wrong? Or was it something deeper, a public breaking point in an industry built on performance? The answers didn't come in official press statements. They came in the reaction. And the reaction was volcanic. The smoke didn't clear, it settled. Days passed, the headlines didn't fade. They multiplied. Gadot unfiltered, Clarkson's crossed line, the interview that shook Hollywood. But behind the spectacle, real consequences began to take shape. Gal Gadot's next film premiere was quietly postponed. Studio executives scrambled, unsure whether her silence was strategy or surrender. A fragrance campaign featuring her was pulled from rotation without explanation, and yet her fanbase grew louder, more loyal, more defiant. Clarkson's team tightened. Future interviews were suddenly pre-screened with ruthless precision. Her producers issued a new set of guest guidelines. Words like respect, sensitivity, and boundaries were added, bolded, underlined. But the deeper shift wasn't in contracts, it was in conversation. For years, the celebrity interview had been a dance, rehearsed, smiles on cue, laughter on demand. But Gadot shattered that illusion with one quiet refusal to play along. Panel shows debated it. Was she unprofessional or revolutionary? Had Clarkson pushed too far, or simply done her job? Was this a celebrity meltdown, or a moment of truth? Then, without warning, Gadot reappeared, not on TV, not in a press junket, but in a university auditorium in Tel Aviv. She spoke on power, on control, on the cost of visibility. She didn't name Clarkson once. She didn't have to. It's not about the question, she told the crowd. It's about who gets to ask it and why. The applause that followed wasn't polite, it was thunderous. Weeks later, the noise finally began to fade, but the impact remained, etched in the industry's memory like a scar. The clip was no longer trending, but its shadow loomed large over every new interview. Hosts hesitated before probing. Celebrities looked over pre-show notes with sharper eyes. The rules had changed not by legislation, but by one moment of rupture. In boardrooms, producers asked, could this go Gadot? It became a verb, a warning, a shift. And as for Gal herself, she returned to the screen, quieter, fiercer, not in blockbuster press tours, but in carefully chosen roles, each one steeped in truth and fire. She wasn't softer, she was sharper, refined by flame. No longer just Wonder Woman, but a woman who had torn off the mask of Hollywood diplomacy. In front of millions. Clarkson, too, evolved. A new tone, a different rhythm. She offered no apologies, but something in her eyes changed. Like someone who had seen the edge and learned to respect it. What happened on that stage wasn't an accident, it was a signal. In a world built on sound bites and smiles, one woman refused to shrink for comfort, and when the walls closed in, she didn't flinch, she stood. Not to perform, to say, finally, and without permission, enough. So now we're left with a question that won't fade. Was it a breakdown, or a breakthrough? Because in that single moment when Gal Gadot rose, voice like steel, eyes unflinching, she wasn't just speaking for herself. She was speaking for every artist who smiled through baited questions, every woman who's been cornered behind velvet curtains, every person who's been told to stay silent for the sake of Lakaya Bility. The cameras caught a walkout, but what really happened was a revolt, against the script, against the rules, against the machine, and that's what haunts us, not just the words she said, but the power of what she refused to say. The dignity in her silence, the weight of her stillness. In an industry addicted to control, Gal Gadot didn't just lose it, she took it back, and somewhere between the silence in that studio and the storm it unleashed, we saw something rare. Not a meltdown. Not a diva moment, but a fracture in the facade, where something honest got out. So the next time the lights come on and the cameras roll, remember this moment, because once you've seen the truth, you can't unsee it. Thank you for watching. If this story moved you, hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into the moments that shake the foundations of fame and power, and tell us in the comments, what do you think drove Gal Gadot to walk away that day? Was it justified, or was there more beneath the surface? We want to hear your side of the story. Until next time, stay curious, stay vigilant, and never stop questioning the narratives they want you to believe. This is just one chapter in a much larger story, a story about the collision of image and reality, power and vulnerability. In the world of celebrity, every smile hides a secret, every handshake masks a battle. Gal Gadot's walkout wasn't just a headline, it was a mirror held up to an industry desperate for control but starved for truth. And as the cameras fade, the questions remain. How far will someone go to protect their story? How long can the facade hold before it shatters? In this ever-changing landscape, moments like these remind us beneath the glitter and glamour, real people are fighting real fights, and sometimes those fights are impossible to ignore. The story doesn't end here, because every viral moment is just the surface of deeper currents of ambition, pressure, and the cost of fame. Gal Gadot's defiant exit is a flashpoint, a reminder that behind the red carpet smiles are complicated, raw human beings. And while the world watched her walk away, some saw defeat, others saw the courage it takes to break free. In the end, the true story is still unfolding, and we'll be here to tell it, one revelation at a time. As the dust settles, one thing becomes clear: this was more than a moment. It was a movement, a call for honesty in a world obsessed with perfection. Gal Gadot's stand challenges us all to demand truth, to embrace vulnerability, and to reject the narratives that silence us, because in the end, the power lies not in the spotlight, but in the courage to walk away from it. And so, as the cameras fade to black and the studio empties, the question lingers: what will happen next? Will this be remembered as a scandal to forget, or a turning point to embrace? Only time will tell. But one thing is certain, the echoes of that day will resonate far beyond the bright lights and rolling cameras, because some moments don't just pass, they change everything.